Hey, 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 what do you know? What do you say? It's Lou, and I'm here with Michele Moreno. We are doing another fun video bunch interview. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. We connected a few years ago when Michelle is an actress. You just went on an audition today, so good luck with that.
Thank
So you
you.
obviously have some experience with being on camera. That I know is one of the things that our folks struggle with the most is just fear of the camera. But before we get there,
Mhm.
tell folks a little bit about you and what you do.
I'm Michelle. I help business leaders become clear, concise, and compelling on camera or off. I'd love you to make more impact with less words and to be fully present on camera.
I love it. Tell us how you got into that and how you were doing, in acting and things like that.
I've been a singer and actress my whole life. And
Hmm.
then one day my husband came and said, Moreno, you got to make more than $12,000 a year. And I said, that's a lot for a singer actress. I'm doing great.
Yeah, as
But
starving artists
uh,
go, that's pretty good.
so I started to, on the side, help business leaders go on camera with confidence. And then eventually it became coaching with general communication skills. I went and got an ICF, certification as a coach. I took a million LinkedIn learning courses and read books. And now I actually help not only entrepreneurs go on camera to sell their service, but helping corporate leaders with their personal brand, their presence, even all sorts of communication in general, public
That's
speaking.
awesome. That's great. And I know we were talking before we started up the recording that there's such a need for that now for folks to be able to communicate clearly and concisely, whether it's in person or like this on Zoom. So when you help those folks in corporate, are you helping them both in person and virtually?
Mostly virtually at
Mm,
this point.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're training them basically to for camera presence and things like that.
Yes. For example, let's say there's an all important high stakes meeting, and
Hmm.
those corporate leaders have to be able to be authentic and make a connection, let's say, to nab
Yeah.
that high stakes or VIP client.
Hmm.
They can't be long winded, they can't be inauthentic.
Hmm.
And the reason is not only the millennials who demanded that companies have a heart, that
Yeah.
companies be trustworthy, that companies have values that match theirs, but Gen Z is even more adamant that
Hmm.
companies be a partner. So they're not going to buy from you if they sense that something's off, something's not genuine. They're not going to buy if they sense that you're not jiving with their values.
Hmm.
So it's very important. It's the gimmick days are over. People went through a pandemic.
Hmm.
Even I used to buy so many things online because I would fall for things like
Hmm.
marketing tricks and,
Yeah.
act now fast and all these things. And I literally, because of the pandemic, I have paused. I've taken a pause, and it's all about
Hmm.
authenticity and connection, but to the nth. And if
Yeah.
people are on camera, the camera reveals all, and
Yes.
people will know whether you're genuine or not.
Exactly, and, people buy from people at the end of the day, right? They're not, I mean, they
Mhm.
used to buy from brands, but more so now it's really building that know, like, and trust that we all talk about so much.
Oh,
So
yeah.
since fear of the camera, or fear of public speaking is like next to dying is like the biggest fear in the world, what do
Yeah.
you say to folks who, I'm sure people have had to do Zoom meetings, but now it's the stakes are high, you really have to be on. What do you tell those folks initially?
If you ever ask an Olympian, how do you feel before the race or the competition? What do you think
Mhm.
they always say?
I think they say they're ready because they practice it 1,000 times.
Mhm. And they will always say they're excited rather than nervous.
Right.
Why? Because they have world-class coaches. And the
Mhm.
world-class coaches know that there's all this extra energy in your body.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people who are afraid have the flight or fight
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
So why not use that? Why
Mhm.
not use that energy and make the decision? I'm going to be not scared, but I'm going to convert that into excitement.
Right.
And
I mean, adrenaline
oh,
is not a bad thing if you use it right, right? If you direct it in the right way.
if you direct that energy in the right way, Lou, which I'm sure you do all the time, right?
Well, I'm an introvert. I don't like being on camera, but I can, in short bursts, I can
Exactly.
rise to the occasion, I guess.
You
Um,
rise to the occasion because you know what to do with that extra energy.
mhm,
And as long
yeah.
as you take the focus off of yourself, that is
Hmm.
the number one. Sure, you're gonna have those negative thoughts. I look terrible. What am I gonna say? They're gonna find out I'm an imposter. All those things that people think.
Hmm.
You're gonna have those thoughts. So just put them in the back seat and focus on the needs, the emotions of the person inside that lens or on the other side of the lens who you're gonna help.
Hmm. So do you handle auditions the same way? I mean, let's say you're going for some big role and there's a lot of stake. Do you do anything else to prepare for that?
The connection that I make is very similar to be in the present moment, in the here and
Hmm.
now. And I am connecting to the needs and the emotions of the other person
Hmm.
in the scene
Yeah.
and the other. Sometimes it's an object, it's an X on the wall that, like for today, there was an X on the wall that had to be the alien. So I'm going to
Yeah.
connect to the needs and emotions of the alien. I'm going to connect to the guy who's protecting me from the alien. And then the alien speaks and I help the alien. And it
Hmm.
all turns on a dime. But that's because I'm not paying attention to my own performance. Because if I
Hmm.
do that, it comes off really fake. And
Right.
that's what you don't want to focus on. You have to
Mhm.
move your focus to the other and make sure that you're breathing and in the present moment with the
Mhm.
camera or the other person.
Yeah. And I like to say that, your message has to be bigger than your fear. You have to know that like what you want to get out there is important enough that you just put everything else aside. How about since we're all on Zoom still and doing all these things, and you may have just heard a plane goes over because I live near an airport, and then the dogs start going crazy. Do you just kind of go with it? I mean, you're gonna have distractions if you're doing videos from home. Or
$16,000 sound booth
no.
or go with it.
Hmm.
Everything in acting is about being in the present moment in the here and now. If
Hmm.
you pretend there's no kid crying, if you pretend that the dog's not barking, nobody's going to
Right.
buy it.
Yeah.
So you have to be in the present and make it a part of
Hmm.
what's happening.
Right.
And in those moments, sometimes those are like the memeable moments or the TikTok
Yeah.
moments or the golden magic. You know, I sometimes tell this story. Do you remember the movie The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman?
Oh yeah. One of my favorites. Yep.
Okay, wasn't that a great movie? If you haven't
Hmm.
seen it, young kids out there, it's
Yeah.
so
It was
worth it.
before their time, but
It's before your time, but it stands the test of time. And at the very end, the director apparently was not there that day for the end scene. So they escape, the couples escape, okay, and
Mhm.
they run off with each other. She leaves her fiance, or husband
Yeah,
at the altar,
they were at the altar
and
and
they
she runs away.
she runs away and they escape on a bus together and they're sitting on the bus. And the guy who filled in for the director that day didn't call cut because he was so inexperienced. He was like the editor filling in
Yeah.
for the day.
Oh my gosh.
So the two actors just sat there
Hmm.
and nobody called cut.
Yeah.
So they just kept rolling the film and they kept it in the movie because the two actors, instead of having this happy, like
Yeah.
romantic ending, they're kind of like
It
looking
was
at each
like the
other
now what?
awkwardly.
Yeah.
Now what?
And
And
it
it's the
made the
most
whole ending of the movie.
made
So,
the whole ending of the movie and it was an accident.
mhm.
So know that magic can happen with mistakes. Mistakes are magic. They make you relatable. People say to
Mhm.
themselves, "Oh, I feel better about myself because that person can screw up." And if
Yeah.
you actually screw up and then continue to be in the moment, you are so relatable, likable, and it's magic.
Yeah.
Always use whatever's in the room.
That's excellent advice. And I know one time, well, you've seen the CNN where the guy's like being all professional in his office and the kid comes bounding in, fooling around.
So
Those are like the
funny.
best interviews. And
So funny.
I had when my kids were little, I have twins, as you know, and when they were little, I remember one time this was my badge of honor for being on. I was doing a video. I said to the kids, "Try to be quiet, don't burn the house down," like a joke. They
Yeah.
come running upstairs, "Dad, the kitchen's on fire," and I'm like, going down with the fire extinguisher. and the toaster was on fire basically, and you know, it's going up the walls, and so I did the whole thing, and I'm
Oh,
like,
oh,
I stayed on camera. I mean, it was chaos.
you took your camera with you?
Yeah, I was like running around like so. I mean, those are like, you know, that's probably the greatest thing. So you just gotta roll with
Yeah.
the punches, I guess.
If you're gonna have some burns on your wall, you might as well get some good footage.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I mean, the kids were like, "Dad, the kitchen's on fire." The one thing I told them not to do, they did. But, you know, stuff happens. So, how about this is one that's, you know, maybe not really controversial, but I know folks have different opinions about using a teleprompter, which I just got to use for longer videos. But for years, I was like, what is your feeling about using a teleprompter?
I've used a teleprompter for long videos, sure,
Mhm.
because I'm used to it. I would
Yeah.
say the best way to save time if you're a writer is to
Hmm.
write out the scripts and then use a teleprompter. But if
Yeah.
you find that you're not good at using the teleprompter, if it throws you off, abandon it. The
Hmm.
best way to save time if you're not a writer is to just put notes with bullet points
Hmm.
on a post-it underneath the lens so that when you're referring to your notes, you're
Yeah.
simply moving your eyes to the side of the camera and then reconnecting your eyes to the lens. Because
Right.
as we know, you don't want to stare into the lens the entire time because then people
Hmm.
get too
Yeah.
much face and it's a little fatiguing for the viewer.
Mhm.
But you have to, when you're speaking, connect your eyes to the lens. And then
Mhm.
when you're taking in the other person, if you're on a Zoom, you can look down at them.
Yeah.
But if you
That's always
never
been
look at
tricky.
the lens, then
Yeah.
people will feel cut off. So I say, don't use the teleprompter unless you're really into writing scripts and
Hmm.
that's the best way that you speak.
And like
Otherwise,
anything else, it takes practice.
bullet points.
You
Go
gotta
ahead.
rehearse. No, it's gonna say, it's just like anything else, you got to get used to it. Like right now, I have the camera mounted pretty high because it's behind the teleprompter, so I have to
Mhm,
sort of force my view up here, so I'm not always looking down here where the image
mhm,
is. So yeah,
mhm.
it takes some getting used to for sure.
It does.
So, but people used to laugh at me because I'd say I put a post-it note next to the lens, and now that you're telling me that that's an actual way to do it, I feel much better. But and any advice on, again, we're working from home. I have a green screen, so it's a little bit different. But as far as setting backgrounds, I've seen what I call hostage videos. Was like, oh my God, this guy's like on CNN. He looks like he's in a basement and he's prisoner somewhere.
I think clear,
Hmm.
not too certainly not messy,
Right.
and nothing too distracting, although
Hmm.
some people who have a book
Yeah.
or something to promote will put it in the background,
Hmm.
which is fine. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I don't recommend that you have absolutely nothing because you want
Right.
to have people to have some sense of you.
Hmm.
But less is more,
Yeah.
and as long as it's clean, organized, and not
Right.
distracting. The other thing is have it be contrasting with whatever you have on because if
Yeah.
you wear the same color as your background, you just everything blends together and you don't pop.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How about, especially for women, they get a little freaked out about hair and makeup and all that. Does it depend on the video, or do you say, yeah, okay, you know, sometimes you do have to, you know, get gussied up for the camera?
I think it depends on your brand.
Hmm.
If your brand is very natural, no makeup, it's the genuine hour, then you don't cake it on, right? If your
Hmm.
brand is about fashion, then you really do want to have some kind of, dress, makeup put together or
Hmm.
image focused brands.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I say if you do wear makeup, then wear it for a video and wear a little more than you normally would for
Hmm.
the video because it shows up less.
Yeah.
And you wear colors that are flattering to
Hmm.
your skin tone because that's especially if you wear no makeup. At
Yeah.
least go through your wardrobe, put your shirt underneath
Hmm.
and whatever looks the best. Just grab your shirt and go on camera and put one at a
Yeah.
time each shirt and see what or top or dress and see what looks the best on
Hmm.
you and what is most flattering to your skin tone.
Yeah. I often talk about, like, you know, if you're just doing a quick video, Facebook Live or whatever, that's less. maybe there's less at stake. And one of the funny things I used to do when I do the video challenges is I'd do my first video right after the gym from the car, saying like, okay, this is as bad as I'm gonna look. So the only way to go is I'm sweating, I'm
That's
gross.
good. That's good.
So I tried
Right.
to set the bar really low for that one. And then, one other question that's, because I know we have a lot of speakers and people who work the stage, and it's not the same thing. What do you think about, or how do you prepare differently for virtual events versus live events?
When you're on the camera, you usually want to have at least half the height of the frame be your face. You don't
Okay,
want to
I'm gonna have to
be,
get closer then.
back here. I mean,
Yeah,
not necessarily. You don't want to be on top of it, but
right.
at least close the gap here.
Yeah,
Now,
you
I
don't have
like
too much headroom so that you're
you
down
don't
like.
want to have the headroom.
Hmm.
Exactly. You don't want to be a kid at the Thanksgiving table.
Hmm.
I like your framing because I actually like your framing a lot because it shows a little bit more of your body. So for me, actually to show a little more of my body might even be better because
Hmm.
then you can see my hands. So
Right.
if you're a hands talker like me, you might want to show it. If you
Yep.
are like me, however, I actually over talk with my hands. So sometimes I will hide them on purpose because I'm an overhandser.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
depends on what you want to bring out. And what was the stage? Stage, you're going to be much bigger.
Hmm.
The camera actually picks up a lot more.
Yeah.
So don't overdo it like you are when you're on stage.
Hmm.
But you want to be clear and articulate. You
Hmm.
want to pause, make sure that you pause in between your points, but you
Yeah.
don't want to overdo it. And if
Hmm.
you use a gesture, maybe one gesture every few
Hmm.
sentences.
Yeah, it's so different because I mean it's stage, and I did this heroic public speaking program with Michael and Amy Port, and we were
Oh
training on the
yeah.
stage, upstage, downstage. I mean, you have so much more to work with
Mhm.
usually when you're live, and then when you're virtual, it's like, okay, I have this much space, and I don't want to move the camera because if you see what's not on the green screen, it's a big mess. So
Right.
that's my world right there.
Right. That is your world. And so you do want to use the space
Hmm.
with your hand gestures
Yeah.
or even placement in the frame.
Hmm.
You don't want to be so rigid. However, you're correct.
Hmm.
Once you've set your framing, once you have your space, you're not going to move too much,
Yeah.
but you try to do some things that are interesting.
Hmm. Eyes on the top third of the screen. We still use the rule of thirds like in photography. Do you-
Oh, yes, the rule of thirds, which was developed by, I think, Renaissance painters,
Mm,
gives you that grid, when you put the
yeah,
grid on your phone. And so the ideal placement, they say, is the
mhm,
third
yeah,
line or the second line, I guess,
that
top third
intersection. Mhm,
of your eyes, either to the right
yeah,
or to the left. So here's one where
mhm,
the two lines cross, and then here's one where the two lines cross.
yeah,
How do I
yeah,
look, Lou?
and I grew up at a TV station, so it was always like, "Okay, you've gotta be here because 'cause you're gonna have to have the graphics over here."
Right,
On
exactly.
TV.
So let's
Yeah.
move over to make sure we have room for
Yeah,
captions.
we'll put the logo there, and so, any other final words of advice, specifically now for, like, corporate folks and people who have to do, like, now what you're doing more of with the corporate training? What's the biggest mistake people make?
I think being cold and unrelatable. They're
Mhm.
not thinking about their audience. They're
Yeah, they
thinking
just think.
about, oh, what is my talking points? Got to make sure. Stop right there.
Mhm,
Empathy first, humanity first.
mhm,
When I say empathy, put yourself in the shoes of the people who are listening.
yeah,
If you have to think of one person who brings out the best in you, so if you're speaking to your team, think of that
mhm,
one person who
yeah,
really matters the most and tap into their humanity and be that human being, that person who cares, not just somebody who's worried about corporate initiatives and the
mhm,
bottom line and shareholder results and returns for the shareholders. It's not about that. It's about people.
yeah,
So tap into who you're talking to.
connecting, excellent. Great advice, thank you so much, Michelle. Tell folks where, what's the best way to find you, work with you, take courses with you, all
Absolutely.
that good stuff?
Absolutely. You can learn all about me at michellemoreno.co, and that's Michelle with one L, moreno.co. And I also have an awesome confidence on camera program that I'd love to make available to your audience. And as a bonus, if you buy it, I will also include one free storytelling session
Ooh,
where
that's
we'll meet for 45 minutes and I'll
wow.
help you come up with a great story that is 1 minute or less.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. That's awesome. We'll put the links here. And I hope you folks will connect with Michelle because I mean, this is like, it used to be like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do a slide. You have to be on camera if you're in business. I mean, there's just no choice. This is the world we live in now. So you need Michelle.
It's a hybrid world.
It is. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Lou.